Welcome to Business Doctor. Let me first thank all the viewers and those who have given me comments about the videos and how useful it is for them. Thank you. For the first time viewers, I thought I wish to let you know that this is a series of structured video for the self-organization, businesses and entrepreneurs, and I'm planning to do it over a period of time. And I would be happy if you could watch from the beginning of the video series and carry on along with me. Some of the sessions will be just a knowledge or information, and sometimes you may have to think along with me to know for yourself. Thank you. Now let's move on to the purpose of this video. We discussed about knowns and unknowns and various combinations in the last video as part of the planning elements. So from a known to an unknown, that's where the spectrum of variations that could occur. So the known is more reliable, more non-randomized, stable scenario where you know exactly what is the problem and how to solve. To an unknown where you do not know anything about it, you are not aware of it, you can't understand. So that's a discovery. In between is the known unknowns and unknown knowns, where there is a knowledge discovery happens from searching to knowledge, attaining knowledge rather. So that's where the remaining or intermediate two scenarios will come. And we discussed about how to handle the planning elements for all these four. One of the planning element which is common for the three, exclusive of known knowns, is an element called Vuca, volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous situations. So that's what we are going to talk about today. Vuca is a US military acronym, came into existence since 1987 or 1990 based on the war scenarios. And this helped them to plan to get their desired output in a way when things are dynamic, don't know what happens, what the soldiers, where the soldiers are, what the four soldiers are doing, etc. So this name was coined based on the volatility, uncertainty, complexity of the scenarios and ambiguous nature of the war fronts. That's where it started, and it has become a leadership style in the last 2 decades. Those things we will discuss down the line in the video. And there is a classic example of that which you all know about how certain section of people or organization are able to do that. I'm just holding it for a moment to keep you in guessing mode. That we'll see it in the end of the or towards the end of the session of this video, what that example could be. So from that perspective, every organization or every individual would like to keep that steady state, and it should be repeatable, etc. That we discussed in the earlier videos as well. And the outcomes have to be predictable, and it should be always predictable. That's what everybody would try to get. But it is not possible in all the scenarios. Okay. So that's where you need a training, a process, an orientation to all these things. Okay, and it will be very difficult from the known knowns, except that to all other three scenarios, it will be very difficult to predict and get the desired output always. That's where the purpose of planning under these conditions, like the crisis management, etc., that would help in handy. Okay, from the organization perspective, this Vuca will tend to shape an organization's capacity, for example, towards anticipating the issues that shape up the organization. It could be understanding and consequences of the issues. Like, you do something, there's a cause and effect. So you do something, what happens towards the cause and what happens to the effect, and whether it creates a cyclic reaction, etc. And interdependency of organizations, products, services, people, processes. And there could be some scenarios where you need to have an alternate reality and what that challenge it would bring up and how to handle those challenges. And any opportunities. See, it's not that VUCA is always on a dangerous thing. It will also open up an opportunity for us. For example, stock market, that volatility is there, but there are a lot of people who play with that volatility and make money. So that's a blessing for them. While from the organization perspective, it may not be a good one. So it varies. So there are a lot of themes, for example, how as an individual or as an organization, you this VUCA can be measured. VUCA research can be measured. It depends on, for example, the knowledge management, how good an organization is able to manage the knowledge, because over a period of time they would have got experience with customers, implementations, product sales, or service related issues, the behavior of customers, usage pattern of customers, or internally if you look at the manufacturing capacities of the organizations, the way people have reacted at different situations, day shift, night shift. So that knowledge management will always help in handy. And planning and readiness, that's what we are discussing about. The processes and resources, obviously, that need to be planned for these kind of situations. The responsiveness to that, see, having plans, etc., is one part. That's what we'll end up with in this video. What is that responsiveness means? Okay, which is nothing but a mindset. And in case of there is a problem, how do we recover and move forward? And the other theme that could be is that in case if it is a system failure, okay, it could be a social environment, it could be a political environment or an organizational environment. It could be, or it could be, completely lack of planning, the whole system collapse, or it could be because of some individuals who flare up on things like, for a short-term burners. So that leads to a behavioral failure. So if you look at VUCA in the in a quadrant scenario, so how much you know about the situation on the x-axis and how you can predict that situation or the outcomes of that situation. Okay, so this is the knowing about the situation, and in the y-axis is the outcome or prediction of the outcome of the situation. Okay, so the lowest quadrant will be basically ambiguity, which is nothing but a lack of clarity about meaning of an event. What happens when something happens? We don't know what it means. These things we will discuss again in the next 2-3 minutes. And the other one is the uncertainty, which is completely unclear about what is happening now. Okay, the complexity comes from the point of view of multiple points or multiple variables in the decision making or in the outcomes. And the volatility, in essence, it is the rate of change of the environment in which we are. Okay, so it could be your organization, it could be department, or you as an individual, maybe as a leader or as a team member in that organization. So we'll discuss about the volatility first. Okay, volatility is the changing dynamic. Okay, it changes. The characteristics is that it's completely unpredictable, unstable. You do not know what will happen when, etc. But it does not mean that it is complicated. That also you have to have it in mind. And you see, for example, today in the internet scenario, there are a lot of information coming in from multiple quarters, and we are bombarded with information. So today you get one, tomorrow there is another one. We call as a news and the fake news and deep fake news. Like that, it goes on and on and on. So it's completely volatile in that sense. So in the same way, the outcome from a team could be a larger department or it could be a small team within that context. It can give different outputs at different times. We will never know what was their input, etc., and we do not know what they did, etc. But the outcomes are totally random, and we do not know how these outcomes were, or if they were able to produce these outcomes were. So, so that's the dynamics in their outcome, and very difficult to plan because there is no consistency, and it creates a crisis. So when there is a crisis, then again you have to deploy a crisis management team, etc., etc. So in this kind of volatile situation, what happens is that you need to plan for somebody playing a role A. They have to also play a role above or a role below. They may have to augment. You may be a generalist or a specialist, but you need to be specialist also. At the same time, you need to have generalizing skills. Okay, so the situation changes, and the speed at which you are going to make up that decision, that has to be split second. When there is a nuclear blast happening in, like, Chernobyl or somewhere in Japan. So what happens is that the decision has to be very fast and it has to be instantaneous. So the mind has to be prepared. Okay, and that means you need different systems in the organization that can cope up with these kind of volatile situations, which means you are trying to build in redundancy, and you have to obviously take advantage of the technology to handle certain redundancies and train people, like the military organizations have their own special teams for handling these kind of crises. So they regularly train for various situations, like they do something in water, something in the air, something inside the building, outside the building, under fire, without fire. So different kinds of thinking you need to have and properly train the people. And probably to solve the crisis, you may have to have a high potential people or team to solve that temporary assignments or temporary situations. Now moving on to uncertainty. The uncertainty is basically because there are a lot of information available around you, but you can't take an action on them. Like, for example, there are too many people sharing the health benefits in the internet, but you will never know which is correct, which is not correct, under what conditions it will work, what conditions it won't work. Is there anything related to timing in the sense that based on your age, for example, or what will be the duration in which you have to engage with that kind of information, and what will be the effect? Okay, if I do this, what will happen to me or to my organization? So these are all the uncertainties. The best way to solve this is that by asking a set of specific questions and try to get the answer for them. Most likely these things will be probabilistic in nature. So it won't give you sure shot. Yeah, this is the way or this is not the way. Maybe it's likely to like the known unknowns and unknown knowns, where it is tending to a discovery. So probability is part of the discovery. So how you will reduce the uncertain situation as part of your planning? You have to gather a lot of information. So when you design a system, when you plan for a system, you need to also capture the additional informations and additional insights It could be customer, again, it could be your manufacturing or trading or financial data or human resource data. You may have to capture additional information so that you can try to correlate with the what is happening there. The same way, any other resources, it could be tools, it could be, for example, electronic sensors. If you are having, you might want to take additional information from those sensors as part of your regular activity or the model you are trying to build. And based on your experience in the past, try to use them back and correlate with the information you have gathered from the main source and the additional source. And maybe you have to ask, like, probing questions in an interview, or like a questionnaire kind of an application that would help you to get this additional information. Or it could be even give you the expected outcome in a particular way. The market survey will give you, okay, if you do this, probably you will tend to get the this kind of expected results. So you can correlate with these kind of questions and the answers. And the only way you can validate all these things is that it has to be a feedback kind of a system. Like, you do something and you get a feedback, and if that feedback adds value to the item you are talking about, the planning item, it could be building a product, or whatever the analytics you are trying to do. So you have to bring it back, which means that you have to constantly do something and constantly get the feedback. You can easily correlate this to the appraisals, okay, or the individuals who go through these kind of appraisals in an organization. So where periodically, like 3 months, 6 months, or yearly. So there is no uncertainty for both the organization and the employee. So this is kind of agile in that sense, where you do something and you expect the result, question the outcome, then validate, then do that. So that cycle is like an agile approach. Now moving on to complexity. Complexity comes because of the number of components or the dynamics of these components and their relationship between them. So, for example, you have too many components in a product. For example, in an automobile, you have hundreds of components which are there, and if something fails, definitely your vehicle is not going to stop. But there are components that get stuck or get into some kind of repair. Obviously, you can't move your vehicles. So if for example, the tire gets punctured, okay, but the overall in the vehicle perspective, tire is just one part, and that is also moving, and there is a wear and tear on that, and you will never know what kind of roads will create what kind of frictions, and that tire, along with the speed with which you are moving. So there are multiple components, and there is a relationship between these two components. Like that, there are hundreds and thousands of components in an automobile, and how these things are. So that's where the complexity comes into picture. It's not that it is complicated, okay, but there is a complexity. So which means that when you begin the work, the scope of work, you need to have as much as possible in detail. It's very difficult to qualify how detailed a detail has to be, but I mean, that's where more the detail, it is better. So people always say the devil lies in the detail. So how much of the detail you can plan through, and that will give you a perspective of how complex situations you are trying to build. So the only way perhaps to solve is that if for each of these scenarios you may have different teams or different components. So if it is a intercomponental design, then the design has to be enhanced. If it is a multiple teams across geographies, for example, that means the communication, collaboration, those things have to be improved. Then any decision if suppose somebody has to take, who can take that call? So which means that there is a kind of parent-child like a scenario where who can take a call and who else have to be following that. So that kind of decision rights will help, and whoever has got this kind of a complex experience, those guys can, if they are part of your organization or the team, that will help you to get some insights on how to live in this kind of complexities. That's where the experience comes, or the knowledge or the wisdom the people carry along with them to the other team members. That is going to have a major value to the team per se. Ambiguous is like, it's completely non-fixed, which means that there are multiple options available. I can choose this, I can choose that. So if you want to go to a restaurant, for example, you may choose, if you are taking a kid along with you, the kid will ask for something else, the elderly will ask for something else, the middle-aged group will ask for something else. So there is a variety of things, and again, these kind of things, cause stress while you are trying to order. I need this, I need that, I need that. So there is it could be a small commotion there, but it also creates a kind of stress in an organization when there are multiple things, multiple teams are doing certain things. So the only way is that the organization has to be well structured. That means, there is a discipline, there is a structure to that, who can do what, etc. That means the outcome is more predictable and less randomized. Okay, and this because people predict with, based on certain actions. That actions will produce, the different kinds of challenges. So then it will put the entire team at risk. So the best way to solve this kind of an issue is that it should be a well-defined process that will create a more structured outcome. That means people can understand, prioritize the needs. In case, you want to try something, okay, in an ambiguous scenario, you want to introduce a product. So you can't have a full-fledged product developed at the start, because you do not know how the user will accept your product. So what will happen is that you come up with a minimal viable product, which is, people generally call as MVP. So you will have a MVP, and which will do go to market and get the feedback. And sometimes you may have to do a prototyping, a rapid prototyping. There are a lot of techniques available for prototyping, and or you may try to do an experiment and pilot, and people call sometimes as a proof of concept. So this will give you the prioritized user inputs, and you will try to structure that as part of the product or the service or the organization you are trying to work on. So this will give some clarity to the whole stuff. Okay, there are some examples which I would like to quote here from for complexity purposes. Okay, see, you want to do business in a global market, for example. So global market means, you have to handle multiple productions, multiple sales, multiple delivery centers, and there are multiple stakeholders, for example, and you may have competing priorities. This market wants this, and this market also wants that. Say, for example, during COVID times, who gets the vaccine? So there are multiple markets available, and which market they have to produce and sell for. And there are multiple brands. Suppose a company is into, for example, in a car manufacturer kind of a scenario, they will have multiple brands, multiple products, and they will have multiple supply chains. So which is a complex scenario. Okay, now from an ambiguity point of view, you want to try in a new market, or is a new product, or new product variant, or it could be a new alliance, like joint ventures between company A and company B. So there are a lot of ambiguity involved, and certain engineering components, like you want to do something. For example, when you are sending some components in a rocket scenario, okay, so you will never know how that will work. So it has to be precise, and it has to be well structured. Then only you can have it in that. Like for example, parachute, okay, and it has to be exactly 100%. It has to be reliable, okay. In a volatile situation, it is natural disaster. It could be a nuclear disaster or a terrorist attack, or it could be a tsunami kind of a situation, or some new technology coming in and completely disrupts the supply chain. So the what you have been doing in the past, it doesn't exist anymore. This is some completely new one. The other thing is again manual in nature, like labor disputes, or any organizational disputes, like intellectual property violations, etc., or a technology breach, those kind of things. In the uncertainty that comes because of competition, uh, or the companies get acquired or merged. So you will never know what happens to that company, or know whether my job exists or my role gets redundant. You will never know. Or any regulations which are coming up part of the government. New every year, or every 5 years, some governments come up with new policies. So what will happen to that? So there is a level of uncertainty from that perspective. So uh, coming to the Vuca, if you look at in practical sense, it is basically an awareness and readiness. But in terms of the learning, the models which you are trying to apply, it is a preparedness. It's you have to anticipate, and it has to be evolved. And there are a lot of interventions at different points in time you need to apply. The best way to handle this scenario of VUCA is about two things. One, the systems and processes, and the other one is the people and their talents, or the talent related development strategies around the people. Okay, people generally this VUCA people talk in the leadership skills, but this has to be part of your planning as well. But planning alone is not going to solve in VUCA scenario. It is a mindset. This is what I said in the first. You have to have that mindset of not just planning, preparing to do or willing to do that. That's the determination which you need to have under VUCA circumstances. With this, I just want to give you the one example where we discussed in the start, which I will give you in the end of this video. You take this example of circus. Okay, you have a lot of actors there, and the people who perform there, and there are a lot of animals, wild animals too, domestic animals. Okay, for example, you have lions, tigers, etc., to dogs and cats. So there are a lot of animals there, and there are a lot of activities like aerobatics, gymnastics, tumbling, juggling of certain things, daredevil stunts people perform. They do it in the from one end to other end. They will just fly and catch. Lot of stunt activities and some freak activities also they do. And just imagine that there is a lot of crowd around this, and not just crowd, people also shout, create kind of like claps, they jeer, lot of things and you remember that the persons who are acting or performing, those people should not get disturbed by all that. And when they are dealing with these wild animals, the wild animals have to have have to behave properly with this person, as well as between the animals also it has to behave properly. So the kind of volatile situation, the kind of uncertainty, the kind of complexity, and kind of ambiguity. Now adding to that is like suppose there is an accident. Okay, that guy falls off from air, and suppose he falls on an animal, or or on something else, okay, what happens? Or there is a fire, or something, some tent is falling down. Imagine the kind of chaos it is going to create. But still, the accidents in a circus is very, 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 very small, which means that though there is a Vuca environment, there is a lot of scope for randomness of untoward incidences, but they practice, they planned, and they have the right tools and processes and people and mindset. That's where I leave it with you today. From randomness to steadiness, that's the purpose of the planning. Thank you. Have a great day today. And we'll see you in the next session, which will be on teams and processes. Have a great day. Cheers. Bye.